99% of turkey hunters think they need a massive 12-gauge magnum to neutralize a gobbler, and it costs them blown patterns and a busted shoulder when they inevitably flinch. Look, stop lugging around a 10-pound cannon through the spring timber just because the old-timers told you it was the only way to get reliable terminal performance. The reality has completely shifted for 2026, thanks to the absolute dominance of Tungsten Super Shot. The 28 gauge is no longer just a polite range toy for shooting upland birds or dusting clays. It is a surgical, dedicated system. We are talking about slinging a dense wall of heavy hitters downrange that packs more payload density than your old lead shells, all out of a rig that weighs practically nothing. I am breaking down the 5 absolute best 28-gauge turkey shotguns on the market right now. Starting off our list at number 5 is the Mossberg Silver Reserve Eventide turkey. Under the hood, this over and under is built specifically to solve the biggest problem with ultra-tight tungsten super shot patterns at close range. Looking at the setup, sporting 20-inch barrels, your capacity is limited to exactly 2 rounds, but it allows you to run 2 completely different choke constrictions at the exact same time. Rugged and reliable, this rig tips the scales at 6.5 pounds, keeping it light enough for the woods, but heavy enough to soak up recoil. Now, let us talk about the mechanics behind this double-barrel beast. It utilizes a robust box lock action featuring dual locking lugs. Instead of just a single flimsy latch holding everything together, those dual steel lugs bite deep into the underbarrel recess, physically locking the breech tight against the receiver. This massive lockup prevents the action from flexing when you touch off a high-pressure 3-inch Magnum shell. Honestly, the trigger snaps like stepping on thin ice, making it easy to stay on target. Recoil is nothing more than a polite shove, even with heavy payloads. I saw a guy at the range struggle with a similar setup once because he forgot to check his barrel selector switch before firing. You have to remember which barrel has the open choke for a 15-yard shot, and which one has the extra full choke for sending it downrange at 40 yards. But here is the deal breaker. It lacks automatic ejectors. Mossberg went with passive extractors, meaning when you break the action open, it just lifts the shells slightly instead of throwing them clear. Picking out spent hulls with cold fingers is a serious annoyance if you ever need a fast follow-up shot. This double barrel option is solid, but wait until you see the monster we have sitting at number 1. Now we get serious, stepping up the game to the semi-auto world with the TriStar Viper G2 Turkey. This rig weighs in at exactly 6.2 pounds, offering a solid balance between carrying weight and recoil absorption. It slings 28-gauge tungsten downrange, giving you the ability to launch massive payloads with absolute authority. Under the hood, this scattergun runs on a dedicated gas piston system. Instead of relying on the raw kinetic energy of the shot, it bleeds off expanding high-pressure gases from the barrel through a small internal port. Those gases drive a heavy steel piston backward, which unlocks the bolt carrier group and cycles the action reliably. Because it redirects that expanding gas, it naturally acts as a shock absorber. Honestly, the recoil bumps your shoulder like a padded swinging door, making it incredibly easy to stay on target. Squeezing the trigger feels solid, snapping like a frozen pine branch when it is time to neutralize a gobbler.
That looks a little better.
I know the brand snobs and fanboys will hate this, but you do not always need to spend top dollar for a dependable workhorse. Sound off below if you trust a budget-friendly gas gun in the brutal spring timber. Last season, I watched a buddy drag a similar gas-operated rig through knee-deep mud, and it never stovepiped once. But let us be real, it is not perfect. The aesthetics are the major deal breaker here. That bronze-coated receiver looks amazing on the rack, but the finish wears off if you just look at it wrong while pushing through heavy briars. The damage to your wallet is roughly $865. Closer to the crown, we have the CVA Scout Spur. This break-action single shot is built strictly for the guys who believe in the one shot, one neutralization philosophy. It features a heavy 22 inches barrel and eats 28 gauge for breakfast, specifically the 2 3/4 inch shells. Tipping the scales right around 7 pounds, it completely defies the sub-gauge trend of going ultralight. Looking at the fire control group, the single shot design completely changes the geometry of the sear engagement. Because there is no massive bolt carrier group violently cycling back and forth, the sear and hammer notch can be machined with razor-thin tolerances. This mechanical advantage eliminates the mushy trigger pull you get on standard repeaters, giving you a match-grade break right at 2 3/4 pounds without risking an accidental discharge. Snapping like a crisp winter twig, that trigger absolutely minimizes shooter error when you are locked in on a bird. When you drop the hammer, the recoil is nothing more than a lazy shove, completely absorbed by that heavy steel barrel. I hunted with an old-timer down in Alabama who swore by this exact single-shot rig because the simplicity left zero room for mechanical failure in the field. But here is the deal. It has a major ergonomic flaw. Hauling a heavy 7-pound single shot through steep ridges all morning feels like carrying a piece of rebar, which totally defeats the purpose of running a lightweight sub-gauge in the first place. Sets you back somewhere between $544 and $574. Entering the elite tier, we are locking in on the Mossberg SA-28 Tactical Turkey. Tipping the scales right around 5.5 to 6 pounds, this rig is an absolute lightweight workhorse. It feeds on 28 gauge tungsten, specifically built to cycle those 2 3/4 inch shells. Sporting a compact 22 inches barrel, it gives you massive maneuverability when you are fighting through thick spring brush. Looking at the ergonomics, the geometry of the stock is where this weapon completely shines. Under the hood of this design is a dedicated rubberized pistol grip combined with a shortened 12.75 inches length of pull. Instead of forcing your arm into an unnatural angle like a traditional straight stock does, the pistol grip locks your wrist into a completely neutral and relaxed position. This mechanical alignment practically eliminates muscle fatigue when you are stuck sitting frozen against a tree for hours, and it naturally brings the factory-ready optic mount closer to your eye for a massive field of view. Honestly, the trigger snaps like a heavy staple gun, crisp and predictable. When you send a payload downrange, the gas operating system eats the excess energy, and the recoil taps your shoulder like a firm handshake. I watched a guy set up with this exact rig inside a cramped pop-up blind last season, and that short profile allowed him to track a moving bird silently without banging his muzzle on the nylon fabric. But here is the truth. It has a performance quirk you need to know about. While it cycles high-pressure hunting loads flawlessly, the tight gas system gets notoriously sluggish and fouls up fast if you try to run cheap, dirty practice ammo through it at the range. Street price is roughly $902 to $991. Rugged, relentless, and practically flawless. Taking the throne at number 1 is the Benelli Super Black Eagle 3. Tipping the scales right at 5.5 pounds, this inertia-driven masterpiece feeds on 28 gauge, swallowing massive 3 inches magnums without hesitation. It gives you the devastating 3 inches magnum capability of the TriStar Viper G2 at number 4, but with a weatherproof, ultra-light architecture that puts the Mossberg SA-28 Tactical at number 2 to shame. Under the hood, this scattergun runs on the legendary inertia-driven system of Benelli, combined with their updated easy locking bolt. Instead of using a dirty gas piston that bleeds off pressure and fouls up your action, the system harnesses the raw kinetic recoil energy of the shotgun itself to compress a heavy internal bolt spring. When that spring expands, it violently throws the bolt carrier group backward, cleanly ejecting the spent shell and feeding a fresh round while keeping the receiver completely free of carbon buildup. This mechanical perfection means the locking lugs aggressively rotate and snap into battery even if you ease the bolt closed silently in the dark, eliminating the dreaded click when you pull the trigger on a giant bird. I saw a veteran guide in the deep swamps of Georgia drop this exact rig into a muddy creek, shake it off, and immediately neutralize a gobbler at 45 yards like nothing happened. Squeezing the trigger breaks clean like snapping a fresh carrot, giving you absolute confidence on the shot. Send in that heavy tungsten payload downrange. The polymer stock flexes to absorb the blow, making the recoil feel like a gentle push from a heavy breeze. Sets you back roughly $1,949. Here is the deal. The days of beating your shoulder to a pulp with a massive 12-gauge cannon are officially over. Stepping into the spring woods with a dedicated 28-gauge gives you a massive tactical advantage. When you pair these ultralight platforms with high-density Tungsten Super Shot, you get devastating terminal performance that rivals the old Magnum loads. You can move faster, sit longer, and stay completely locked in on your target without anticipating a brutal kick. Honestly, if you are still lugging around 10 pounds of steel and wood, you're just living in the past.